Hi, I'm Miss Fidaly, and I'm going to talk to you about Chapter 8 of To Kill a Mockingbird today. Chapter 8 starts out in the winter when Mrs. Radley dies, and her body is hauled out of the house in the neighborhood for everyone to see, and it becomes a spectacle. Atticus, of course, goes over there and he shares his condolences and probably helps with all of the legal aspects of everything. And while he's there, the kids are contemplating and arguing about who should ask Atticus if he saw Arthur Boo Radley while he was in the house. And finally, Jim wins. So when Atticus returns, Scout pipes up and says, "Atticus, did you see Arthur Boo Radley while you were at the Radley house?" And Atticus says, "No, I did not." I'm sure he did, but I'm pretty sure he says that so that the kids will drop it. And so they get the hint, and since they're already on thin ice about the Radleys, they don't ask him anymore. And so the next morning, they wake up and Scout is screaming. Atticus runs to her and he asks her what's wrong, and she says, "The world is ending, Atticus." And he says, "No, it's not, honey. It's just snowing," which is something that hasn't happened in Maycomb since 1885. And the lady calls on the phone and she says that there's no school today. So the kids get to stay home, and Jim gets the great idea of building a snowman. He wants to build a snowman, and Atticus doesn't think that it's going to be able to happen because it's just a little bit of snow, but Jim is determined to build a snowman. So him and Scout set out to the yard to start looking at the snow. And of course, Scout is trying to eat it, and Jim's like, "Don't eat it. You're wasting it. That's weird, gross." And then finally he says, "Let's go over to Miss Maudie's and get some more snow because there's not enough in our yard." So they do that. And Miss Maudie says, "Yeah, take all my snow, of course, right? It's beautiful, but it's going to kill my azaleas and I need to keep them warm." So they start gathering snow. And Scout says, "Are we going to build a snow baby, Jim, since there's not a lot of snow?" And he says, "No, we're going to build a real snowman. So we better get to work." So they end up with 5 baskets, I'm thinking clothes baskets, of earth and 2 baskets of snow before they start building their snowman. And then this is kind of where some of the racism in the book starts to show up. And Scout says, "Jim, I haven't ever heard of a N-word snowman." And every time that I talk to students or read this, I always say N-word just because of the negative connotation and the meaning behind it nowadays. But it did not carry the same thing back then. Back then, this was a really kind of acceptable term, right? We know that people in the South like to change the endings to a lot of words, right? From like going to goin' and y'all and stuff like that. And so this was just another way. They changed the word Negro, which was very acceptable and still an acceptable term today, to the N-word. And that's just because it's a Southern thing. And then over time, it got a lot of negative connotation behind the meaning because it was associated with racism, even though it was also associated and still is with ignorance. Because here we go, a young kid, a second grader, is saying, "I haven't ever heard of an N-word snowman," right? So then Jim says he won't be black long because Jim's method is to take the black snow, the black earth and the snow and mix it together and then put the rest of the snow on top. That way they have enough to build a whole snowman. Anyway, they go on and they talk about how it starts to look like Mr. Avery, their neighbor, that they don't like so much. And then they finish the snowman. And they are very proud of their work, and they cannot wait until their father Atticus gets home to show him. And when he comes home, he says, "This is impressive, but it's liable. You have perpetrated fraud because the snowman looks just like Mr. Avery, and we have to disguise this fellow now because Mr. Avery might not like that." He's implying that Mr. Avery is probably racist. He doesn't want to look like a black person, and there's black in the snow. And so Jim gets the good idea to run over to Miss Maudie's house and grab her gardening hat to put on the snowman to disguise it. And even though Mrs. Maudie is like, "Jim, get back here," Atticus is laughing and says, "Oh no, it's fine. Go ahead and disguise him. We wouldn't want to make Mr. Avery mad." Next thing you know, the kids are getting ready for bed, and Scout is woken up by her father, and he tells her to get up right now. And she says, "Is it morning?" And he says, "No, put on your robe, honey. Miss Maudie's house is on fire, and we need to get out and go outside and help her." Then he tells the kids to go in front of the Radley place, down the street, out of the way, stay by each other, don't talk to anyone, and stay put while he helps out. And do as I tell you. And then we have an old fire truck coming up that is not working because it's so cold, and the people in the town are pushing it. And then finally another fire truck pulls up from the next county, and the fire hydrant is broken and it's sprouting all kinds of water. And it's really just a messy scene, right? We've got a house on fire. We have people in the neighborhood trying to get the furniture out for Miss Maudie and help her. And she is, in distress at the time, just a little bit, which the kids are kind of shocked that she's keeping her cool. But anyway, everyone's all right. And then Scout gets worried about a book that was in there, and Jim tells her not to worry. It's not time to worry yet. So he says everything will be okay. And they stand there and they watch the whole scene unfold until they go back home. And when they go back home and they're with Atticus again, he says, I thought I told you guys to stay put and not go anywhere. And they said, we did. We didn't go anywhere. We stood exactly where you told us in front of the Radley house by the gate, and we watched and we stayed put. And then Atticus says, well, where did you get the blanket? And Scout is like, I have no idea. Where did this blanket come from? And then she tries to go through everything that they did and explain herself. And finally, it looks like, Atticus said something that it looks like everyone in Maycomb was out there tonight, even the people that we did not expect to see. And so he's implying that Boo Radley put the blanket on her. And by the time Scout understands it, she wants to throw up. She cannot believe that she was that close to Arthur or Boo Radley and he gave her a blanket without her even knowing. Of course, that's the one person that she's been trying to see, right? She and the kids are so curious about it. So then Atticus tells Jim and Scout, do not get any fancy ideas and to leave the Radleys alone. And they say they're not going to do anything. And then they talk to Mrs. Maudie and tell her how sorry they are. And she has a surprisingly good attitude. And she's excited about building a new house and having the best garden there ever is, to try to cheer the kids up so they don't feel too bad for her. And then Jim just said that's just how Miss Maudie is, even though they both have a hard time understanding her positive behavior in such a negative situation.